Hi, my name is Prakash and I work as a DevOps engineer with Devtron Labs. In this video, I will be demonstrating how easily you can create a Kubernetes deployment using Devtron. So let's get started by logging in. I'll use Google Login to log into Devtron. Okay, now I am at the dashboard of Devtron tool. Here you can see all the deployments. To create a new application or a new deployment, I'll click on Add New Application button on the upper right corner. Here I can give a name to my application. So applications in Devtron are not environment specific, so you need not mention the environment name in the application name, as the same application can be used for deploying across all the environments that you might need to deploy on. So I'll give it a name. I'll select a project for this application. You can also copy the configurations of a app from any of the existing application if you want to here, but here I will create an application for from scratch for this particular demo. So now the app has been created. I'll select the Git provider, which is in my case GitHub Public. I'll enter the repo URL over here. Um, you need not enter a checkout path in case you are not using multiple Git repos for this application. Multi-git a multi-git configuration can also be used with Devtron, where git with a git app repo is used for source code and another is being used for configurations, or a configuration where or an app where there are three git repos for the same application, and your Docker file is using the code from all the three git repos. In that case, uh, you'll need to specify a checkout part for each Git repo. In our case, it's single repo, so I'm just leaving it blank. This is added. You can add multiple Git repos from here if you want to. In our case, it's single, so I'm proceeding to the next screen, which is the repository section. I'll specify the Docker file name, which in my case is Docker file. I'll select the registry and the repository where it will be pushing the build images to. The Docker build arguments, if needed, can also be supplied over here in key value pairs. In our case, it's not required, so I'm leaving it blank for now. Saving this configuration and proceeding to the next screen, which is the deployment template. Uh, to keep this demo simple, I'll only configure the most required configurations in this particular section. I will be covering the more advanced one in another video, which you can see. So here my app is a JS app, so it will be running on port 8080, which you can specify over here. The service port is also the Kubernetes service port is also specified over here, which will be the default, that is 80. I'll also need auto scaling to work for this, so I'll enable this. The maximum number of replicas for my application would be 3, and the minimum would be 2, which I have configured over here. Then you can specify the resources needed by your application. I'll keep it as default, but you can supply the required values over here. I'll increase the limits to say zero point 0.5 core, and the memory required to say 100 MBs, and I'll save this configuration. Now I'll proceed to the next step, which is the workflow creator. So in order for you, in order you, in case you need to deploy your application in multiple environments, you'll need to create multiple workflows. So I'm creating a workflow over here. Okay, once the workflow is created, I'll need to add a CI pipeline to this workflow. So the CI pipelines can be of three types. It can either be a normal CI pipeline where the Devtron tool will build the image from the Docker file and the Git repository that is supplied. Another can be a link CI pipeline, which means that you can link existing CI pipeline on Devtron to this pipeline. And another one could be a incoming webhook, or you can also supply image from outside Devtron tool and still make the deployment through Devtron. In that case, you'll need to select the incoming webhook. In our case, we will be creating a continuous integration pipeline in the Devtron itself. I'll give this pipeline a name, or say prod pipeline, and I'll set it to automatic. I'll build from master branch. In case you need to supply any pre-build stages or pre-build configurations or post-build configuration, you can supply your scripts over here. You can give it a name, stage 1, and supply your shell script over here. Just for this demo, I'm supplying a shell command over here. I'm keeping the post build step as blank. You can also keep the pre-build as blank and just create a pipeline without any pre or post build stages. I'll create a pipeline. Now the pipeline is created. I'll attach it to a CD pipeline to deploy it on a Kubernetes environment. Let's keep it as prod 1, the name, and I'll select the environment as dev, and it automatically maps it to a namespace in the cluster, which is also dev in our case. You can now at this stage you can also specify a pre-deployment or a post-deployment step if needed. You you can use the sample script to do that. For our case, I'll just copy the script and paste it over here. I'll select the deployment strategy to be blue green. You can also select it to be canary, recreate, or rolling. I'll select it as blue green for this particular demo. You can also configure the deployment strategy configurations by clicking over here. Let's keep it default for now and create this pipeline. Now, once this pipeline is created, you can go to the trigger mode by clicking on this button over here. But before you go to the trigger view, I'll also show you how you can configure the config maps and secrets. The config maps are the configurations or environment variables that your application will need or might need. I'll create a config map by the name CM12. You can supply the values over here, key 1, value 1, like this. You can either inject these variables as environment variables in your pod, Kubernetes pod, or you can also mount it as a data volume inside your container. So for this demo, I'll just keep it simple. I'll inject these values as environment variables in our container. You can also view this in a GUI format if you want to. I'll save it. I'll move on to the secrets. Secrets are nothing but the environment variables which need to be kept as secret. That is password for say. So I'll supply this pg Postgres password as a secret value. Let's keep this password as 123456 and save the secret. So the secret is saved. Okay, so difference between the config map and secrets is that the secrets are not stored in plain text. They are base64 encoded and then saved. But while your container is running, it is injected as plain text inside the container as environment variables. So everything you supply in config maps and secrets is mounted in your container as environment variables. Okay, so I'll update this if required. Also, there are environment overrides, or as you can see on the left pane over here. So if you have multiple environments, you will see multiple environments listed on here. So you can also override the configuration that you have supplied in deployment template, config maps, and secrets over here. So if you have any specific environment related configurations, so you have different environment related configurations for each different environment, you can override all the common settings and specify over here. So once these configurations are overridden, only these overridden configurations will be used, and not the specific and not the combined one that you have already supplied over here in this section above. So I'm just overriding this configuration by clicking on allow override, and then modifying the values of the limits here as zero point 0.1 and saving it. Okay, so now this deployment template has been overridden, as you can see. Now so you might have different passwords for different environment. So I'll also go to secret section and I'll override it by clicking on allow override, and then let's say my password for this particular environment is ABCDEFGH and save it. Okay, these configurations are saved. You can also add secrets over here that are environment specific. So that will not be added to your common secrets. And you can same way you can also add config maps that are environment specific. So here I have a deployment template which is environment specific, a secret that is environment specific, and a config map which is general and common for all the environments. Now I'll go to the trigger mode to trigger the CI pipeline. To to trigger the CI pipeline, I simply click on select material and select whatever uh, commit you want to build. You can also check your file changes by clicking on show changes like this. Time is also displayed. The commit, the author is also displayed. You can also click on this refresh button in order to get the latest commits if your latest commits are not being displayed here, which might take a delay of 1 to 2 minutes depending on the configuration that we have done. Once I have selected a commit, I can click on start build to build this configuration. So once CI is triggered, a CI pipeline is triggered, you'll see this is running. To click to see the details of this section, the CI build configurations, you can also click on details. This will take you to the logs of the CI image building process. It has brought up a new node for this now. Now it's creating a container for building the image. Now you'll see that the logs will start flowing in. Yeah, you can see these logs are flowing in. You can do a full screen and check the logs. Go again to the trigger section and see that our pre-deployment stage was also triggered by this pipeline, as this was set on an auto mode. You can go to the details to see the pre-deployment step. Yeah, the details. You can also download the reports for this section. I'll go back to see if the deployment has initiated. Now you can see that the deployment has initiated. I'll go to the app details to check if the deployment has been initiated. Yes, as you can see, there are 3 replicas that it has created. According to the configurations, it might take around 1 minute to fully um, roll out this deployment. You can check the status of each and every component by clicking on progressing over here. Now you can see that everything is healthy, everything has come up healthy. Now you can see the CPU usage and the memory usage of this particular deployment over here. You can see all the Kubernetes components uh, regarding this deployment over here, the service, the secrets that we have created, the config map that we have created, the endpoints, the HPA configurations, and the replica sets configurations, and the rollout configurations as well. That's how easily you can create a Kubernetes deployment using Devtron tool.